On September the 1st, 2020, Crusader Kings 3 was released to the world to a critical acclaim. Modernizing visuals, changes to the core systems. While Crusader Kings 2 had the content, the game's visuals were starting to show their age. Simple tasks felt hidden or buried under menus, and that's not without talking about the mountain of DLCs, some which felt required. Crusader Kings 3 was hopefully the clean reset the fans were hoping for, balancing a fine line between updating a classic, ease of entry, and improving the mechanics, and hopefully relieving some of the bloat of the DLC from Crusader Kings 2. Today, we're here to talk about the road of DLC for Crusader Kings 3 and why tours and tournaments was required to be a success. For those who are already on the Crusader Kings 3 bandwagon and just want to know about tours and tournaments, you can skip to the time code here. But for those who want to stick around for the journey, well, thanks. Well, here's a picture of Pixel. Alright, still here? Great. Making the swap from Crusader Kings 2 to Crusader Kings 3 is a tough one. Yes, the visuals are massively improved in Crusader Kings 3, and some of the mechanical changes are welcome. Looking at the automation of Navy, I have yet to meet anyone who hates this change, but you can't help but notice the elephant in the room. With 10 years of Crusader Kings 2, you've got major DLC packs and near limitless amounts of mods that can make the game completely different. Crusader Kings 3 is a solid base game, and I'd argue that base Crusader Kings 3 is far superior to base Crusader Kings 2. Which, in 10 years of learning and working with a fresh game, you would hope that they would nail, and I believe they have. But with Paradox Games comes the DLC. For those that have never tangled with Paradox DLC to their grand strategies, allow me to bring you into the fold. Paradox DLC add expanded gameplay function to a very focused part of the game, with an update usually included to add a small portion of what would be included in the DLC, almost as a taster. However, without purchasing the DLC and experiencing the game with and without them, you can feel the game is being robbed without them. Going back to Crusader Kings 2, I personally can't go back to playing base Crusader Kings 2 without DLC packs such as Reaper's Due, Old Gods, Conclave, and Way of Life. As these added mechanics, I'm almost convinced were meant to be in the base game, but were removed for the mere fact that they needed a DLC pack for that month. But that's just my tinfoil hat theory. Now Crusader Kings 3 is out, and a lot of the mechanics and systems that were introduced in the DLCs of Crusader Kings 2 are absent or torn down. Earlier start dates that were introduced in Old Gods and Charlemagne, diseases and plagues from Reaper's Due, China and its influence from Jade Empire, all gone. Base launch Crusader Kings 3 is a very light meal compared to the buffet that is modern day Crusader Kings 2. You'll enjoy the changes to warfare and the improved visuals, but there was bound to be a feature in Crusader Kings 2 that you're missing and wish had made its way into Crusader Kings 3. But this is Paradox. In no time we'll get the DLC that will add some meat to the bones that is Crusader Kings 3. 6 months later from launch, on March the 16th, we'd get our first flavor pack, and the new direction Paradox was taken in the form of the DLCs, in the form of Northern Lords. Paradox for Crusader Kings 3 had made the change on how DLC will function for a better term. Flavor packs being hyper-focused on a culture or location, expansions that will make gameplay changes to all cultures, kingdoms, and locations, and event packs that will, well, add events. Don't worry, we'll get to them. We'll get to it. The Northern Lords DLC came out, and this was a massive improvement if you wanted to play around Scandinavia, as all the mechanical changes were to playing as, well, Vikings in Scandinavia. Personally, this is the region I most enjoyed playing in Crusader Kings 2 and in 3, with my personal interest being around Vikings and the European areas and most of England. Improvements to raiding, access to shield maidens, giving the ladies of my kingdom more agency and more use rather than just being a marriage token, and the banger of a soundtrack that kicks in times of war. I can't play Crusader Kings 3 without this piece of DLC. Great for me, but if you're more interested in, say, Africa, or a more peaceful playstyle, well, you were shit out of luck. Did I mention that this was the only DLC to come out in 2021? Possibly due to the virus of unknown origin, but we'll never know. February the 8th, 2022 was when the Royal Court was finally released, the first of the expansion packs, which I'll admit I was most excited for. Playing Crusader Kings, I play Crusader Kings for the role-playing elements rather than the management side of things. Every time I think of running a kingdom, my brain would always go to the king or queen sitting in a throne room listening to the complaints of the peasants.
It is no concern of mine whether your family has... What was it again?
Food?
Ha! You really should have thought of that before you became peasants.
The idea of having a throne room showing my gains from wars, peasants lining up around the corner to air their concerns and their requests. This surely was one of the DLCs that would make it easier to cut ties with Crusader Kings 2. Static models, free random choices every few hours, all for $40. What the actual... And if you look at the Steam page, I clearly wasn't the only one that thought this. The positive reviews mention the ability to form your own cultures, but this came with a free update. With this being their first expansion pack and a 2-year wait, it felt light and overpriced. While the features of the court system were available to all cultures and locations, it was incredibly shallow. With just a handful of events that would call you to hold court every few months and having artifacts on display, it just wasn't worth the $40 that you were being asked. Comparing Crusader Kings 2 to Crusader Kings 3 DLCs, it just was no competition. Crusader Kings 2 was just knocking it out of the park, with Crusader Kings 3 DLC just feeling really lacking. Reapers Do would add plagues and diseases that would affect your kingdom drastically. Royal Court would ask you to go back to your kingdom and answer 3 questions. Sure, you might get to settle a dispute between 2 lords, and maybe you'll have to choose who will get to look after a baby between 2 ladies, maybe even cutting the baby in half, but ignoring the court options, nothing affects your game negatively. I enjoyed what I got from Royal Court. I'm more annoyed that I paid $40 for it, and I just really wanted more. I wanted some effect of participation of Royal Court, but honestly, if you bought it and installed it and didn't even engage with it, you wouldn't notice. This could all be effects of the virus of unknown origin. Well, we'll never know. But hopefully, with the world returning to normal and people gathering back together, hopefully Paradox would nail it out the park with its next pack. I enjoyed Royal Court, I wanted more from it, and I'm annoyed I paid $40 for it. Just a few months later, on the 31st of May, the next flavor pack was released, The Fate of Iberia. Again, another flavor pack, this focusing on the Iberian Peninsula, focusing on the conflicts of the 3 warring factions, adding in a struggle mechanic to spice up the wars and conflicts of the region. While I wasn't aware of the history of Iberia, this flavor pack had me interested enough to dive in and experience the multi-layered wars and conflicts of the region. While having more depth than the Northern Lords flavor pack, this didn't stop the complaints that would come in. An interesting mechanic was introduced in the form of the struggle mechanic, adding layers to the conquest mechanics of the region, instead of just sending murder stacks to conquer the territory. However, you could see the struggle mechanic having a mind of its own at times, with it not really doing what you would expect it to do, and it being unclear of how you engage with this mechanic. But when the system did work, it worked incredibly well. But the mechanic was limited to this region, so once you were done here, or you started out somewhere else, you were back to just sending out the murder stacks. With this being a flavor pack, if you weren't interested in this region or the cultures tied to the Iberian struggle, you were left empty-handed and just wishing for more. Which then brings us to the 8th of September 2022, which brings us the Friends and Foes event pack. Friends and Foes was pitched to add hundreds of events that would trigger around, well, your interactions with your friends and foes. Events in Crusader Kings are basically boxes of text with character models, usually static. These are in the base game, and they were adding hundreds of more in for $7. I'm going to level with you. I've played hundreds of hours of Crusader Kings 3, seen hundreds of events. I bought this pack on the launch day, and I'm only about 70% confident I can identify 5 of the events that are triggered from this pack. This shouldn't have been $7. This should have been a free update, and I feel that Paradox were kind of taking the piss with this one. And the Steam reviews reflected this, with players not being able to see the value for their money, or their games being negatively affected, with the aforementioned 4 events being triggered over and over again, resulting in random NPCs just hating you for events outside of your control, just because your king gave them a funny look one day. Comparing Crusader Kings 2 and to Crusader Kings 3 in the same time frame release, Crusader Kings 2 had close to 9 DLCs out by this time, adding in new cultures, new start dates, something that Crusader Kings 3 is yet to add at the time of this video, and mechanics that all cultures could be affected by. I remember seeing in the Crusader Kings 3 Reddit section, fans wondering what was going on with the new direction of the DLCs and the changes, and wondering where the creativity is. But believe me, the creativity was coming. 7th of March 2023, Tours and Tournaments was announced. And I'll admit, the title did not spark the most excitement from myself, and seeing the comments on the announcement trailer, it was a mixed bag. Voices of concern from previous DLCs, from being too hyper-focused on an activity or playstyle, the possibility the gameplay features would be faction-locked, of course, and that price tag. However, as information was slowly revealed, we were presented with something that was truly different, something that was truly special. I can confidently say that Tours and Tournaments is the best Crusader Kings free expansion pack that has been released to date, but also the best free update that has come with an expansion pack. Tours and Tournaments is the first expansion pack that places a tick firmly in the will I play Crusader Kings 2 or will I play Crusader Kings 3 box, with a tick firmly for Crusader Kings 3. You've heard me ramble long enough, now we'll get into what you exactly get with Tours and Tournaments. And what do you get? Well, it's basically what's on the tin. So what do you exactly get in the tin that is Tours and Tournaments? Well, it's broken down into a handful of new features and activities, such as the Grand Weddings, the tournaments, the revamped activities to the hunting and pilgrimages, and of course, the tourings. But this is not to include what also came in the free updates, such as the reworked regencies, reworked activities, vassal standings, men-at-arms stationings, and more. Again, these all came in a free update included with Tours and Tournaments. Let's start with the touring mechanics, something that I didn't know I wanted, but now that I have it, I can't see Crusader Kings without it. Previously, if your ruler took part in an activity other than leading a war, they would just appear in that region. Go on a hunt, poof! Your ruler would be 3 counties over and having the time of their life. Even if their castle was being sieged, somehow they would make their way past the guards and would be out in the woods with the boys. Even more jarring was if your ruler was invited to a feast, as they could fast travel several kingdoms over to enjoy a meal and a drink with their other king bros. It was something that would take me out of the role-playing experience, but it was one of those things I would just accept that this was part of the Crusader Kings roleplay draft. Thankfully, it looks like someone over at Paradox noticed this and thought the exact same thing and chose to address it. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Every time you've watched a show like Game of Thrones, Vikings, or any of those random medieval movies, there's always talk or a scene of them of a king and a queen in a wagon touring their countryside with their entourage. The touring system allows you to roleplay this entire system in a deep mechanic. The touring system allows you to plan your tour. This applies to hunts, touring the kingdoms, participating in feasts in other kingdoms, pilgrimages, and more. When you trigger one of these activities, you'll have to plan out your route. You'll be presented with the factors that will affect your trip, such as the risks that come with the trip, such as wild beast sightings, bandits, or the fact you're going to be traveling through enemy territory. But you can plan out the route to be longer, to go into more safe territories, or go plan it through a shorter route which may be more dangerous. But you're not just limited to planning your route, you'll also be introduced with the mechanics of your intent and also new court rules that can affect your trips. These new court rules include your caravan master, a court member who can speed up your travel time and reduce the risks of your trips, your master of hunt, who will report beast sightings, including the legendary white beasts, making it more controllable to find that legendary white rabbit. But I'd be ashamed if I didn't mention the addition of falconry. Yes, bringing the best birds to the huts, which also includes its own skills. It functions pretty much exactly the same as regular hunting, but, you know, I'm okay with this. Also, you'll need to spend money on travel options. These are things like experts that can be hired to reduce risks of certain territories, such as forest guides that will, well, help reduce risks in forests. Introduced to most activities is the intent system, which is by far one of the most welcome changes to Crusader Kings I've seen in a long time. When participating in many of the new activities and old activities, you'll be given the option to select your intent. Are you going hunting just to hunt deer? Are you hanging with the boys? Or maybe something more insidious? Why are you seeing the world during your pilgrimage? The intent system adds in a much welcome addition in befriending and beheading those around you. As in later games, you're limited in how many people you can deal with around you. Feasts can improve your relationships with those immediately around you, but when you're trying to murder someone or seduce someone in particular, you can only do it one at a time and at a very slow pace. The intent system allows another avenue of improving or, well, murdering others. Next on the activities is the Grand Weddings, expensive shows of your love or power. When selecting a spouse, you'll be given the option to select a grand wedding instead of the traditional wedding, increasing your odds to marry outside of your league and allow for much more powerful alliances through marriage that would normally be outside of your reach without investment into the relationship before attempting to marry someone. Engaging in a grand wedding, you'll be betrothed to your selected target and given 3 years to get in and finish off the wedding. Once you kick off the grand wedding, like other activities, you'll be given the options of your intent for the wedding, from it to being having fun or to making friends. You'll also be given the option to spend more money into the wedding, from food to entertainment to the venue, all factoring in the bonuses that you'll receive at the end of the wedding. Once selected, you'll be able to pick out your guest lists, your friends, and finally, you can get around to being hitched, with a recap of the events before, during, and after the wedding. But let's say you weren't looking for love, but instead you really liked Season 3, Episode 9 of Game of Thrones. Well, murder feasts are available, should you have unlocked the forever infamous perk from the Torturer tree, allowing for the new feast option, Murder Feast. Similar to planning a wedding, you'll need to invest in good food and drink and entertainment to entice the target to willingly come to your boudoir. But if committing to a murder feast to murder someone, surely you don't want to just get the one kill. Why not kill everybody? No witnesses. You also can pick the option to host the murder feast with killing just the target without raising suspicion to yourself, but I mean, where's the fun in that? And like the early activities, once everything's been selected and been engaged, you get a recap of, hopefully, your successful murder feast. Lastly are the grand tournaments. Hosted tournaments of skill, of jousting, dueling, and more. Truly the showcase of the expansion pack. When a tournament is being hosted, it's open invite. You'll get a notification that says that a tournament is being hosted within your region or within a neighbouring region, and you begin your planning trip using the touring mechanics to get yourself over to the tournament. Or you can eliminate that risk and host one yourself. Hosting a tournament yourself allows you to choose what activities will be available, beginning with 2 activities out of a list of 8 activities, allowing you to pick up to 5 activities in total, all based around era advancements and traditional unlocks. When hosting a tournament, you'll also have to spend money on the accommodation and the rewards, enticing more and more participants to your tournament. Regardless if you're hosting or you've just arrived at the tournament, you'll spend the next few days participating in the activities, which also includes a new town screen where you'll be able to choose what you'll be doing during the tournament. Currently, I'm enjoying a playthrough where I'm currently grooming my heir to be ready to focus on the glory that comes from these tournaments, with a new trait that improves my skill in these competitions, and outside of the competitions, with each successful participation in these activities. But even if you're not participating in these tournaments, you can use it with the intent system to hire new knights, relax and fill your purse with money from bets, buying items from the shops, and of course, more murders. While visiting the tournament grounds, you'll be presented if you're qualified or not, and based off your character stats will increase this. You'll also be able to participate in activities around the site, improving your odds to allow you to qualify, through honourable or dishonourable means, and even getting others disqualified. Even if you're unable to participate in the tournament, you can still spectate and place bets. When participating in these events, whether it be a duel or a chess match, you'll be presented with choices that factor in your skills and the chances of success. At the end of each round, you'll either succeed or fail, but you'll be ranking up or holding your place in the tournament. At the end, you'll be given your rewards based on the number of successes and the investment that the host has presented into the tournament. These can include money and even artifacts. Tours and tournaments is how an expansion pack should be done, and hopefully a new standard that Paradox is going to maintain with these updates. Royal Court was a great idea that just wasn't fleshed out enough. I'm sorry, but free choices and aesthetic screen just wasn't good enough and not what we were hoping for an expansion pack. Tours and Tournaments, though, has smashed it completely out of the park, adding in activities that you can really sink entire gameplay around. The activities themselves give off great benefits that don't break the game, but don't punish you for not engaging with them. And these activities are ones that make sense in the grand scale of things. Tournaments were big, massive shows of power back in the day, so it makes sense that you'll get major benefits for participating in it. It also fixes a small issue I've had with the late game, which is having something to spend my gold on. As in late game, my court would be maxed out and I'd have a strong standing army, but still have more money than I know what to do with. This also doesn't include what came in the free update, which includes the Regency's reworked activities such as the hunting and pilgrimage activities, vassal stances, and the men-at-arms stationing. These have all been recapped fantastically over on Paradox's channel with a small YouTube video, which I've put a link down below. Definitely worth a check out, and these updates are just really welcome. Do I recommend tours and tournaments? Yes, but I can understand why people think $40 might just be a bit too steep. I'm voting with my wallet on this one, and this is the level that I want my expansion packs from Paradox to be at. We've got improvement to existing activity systems, engaging new activities, and activities that require an investment. Anything to add mechanics outside of warfare, as I feel that's kind of the main draw of Crusader Kings 3 right now. The only thing you've got is conquering the world. Hopefully this translates over to more deeper flavor packs, as I believe the flavor packs are a great idea, but they're just not taken far enough. I've loved the previous DLC packs and the flavor packs, but compared to tours and tournaments, I can't but help feel like we've been shortchanged. Hopefully Paradox maintains this level, and this becomes the new standard of what we should see from our expansion packs and flavor packs going forward. I've been Welsh1. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you're interested in more content, feel free to give me a like and subscribe. And we're also live weekly over on Twitch, where I stream nerdy-ass games, so come on by. From myself, Pixel, and Goose Kitty, thank you very much, and take care of yourselves. Have a great one.